Good evening. I'm always so impressed with what a diligent crowd y'all are. Thank you. Good evening, and welcome to Historic Charleston Foundation's May Advocacy Forum. I am Winslow Hastie, President and CEO, and as we do every May, we are excited to celebrate Preservation Month by presenting an engaging community forum focused on a pressing topic. Of course, this year's topic is what we are referring to as responsible tourism. This city-led initiative will engage the smart folks at Bloomberg and at Harvard to help with data analysis, research, and benchmarking so that we can be organized and prepared to conduct a rewrite of the city's tourism management plan later this year. So it has been 10 years since Historic Charleston led the charge on the 2015 rewrite of the tourism management plan. And we are certainly due, we feel, and many others in the community, we're due for another pulse check, as we call it. Now, I'm no data expert, but I do know that visitation has dramatically increased since that last effort, and it is always good policy to review management approaches and policies periodically to make sure we are proactively addressing any challenges and fully capitalizing on any opportunities. Also, the theme of this effort is to look at tourism through the lens of the resident, because, as I often say, and many others too, I don't think I necessarily coined the phrase, but a great place to live is also a great place to visit. If we want to maintain our renowned hospitality, the natives must be assured that our proverbial henhouse is being properly monitored. As the first city in the country to develop a comprehensive tourism management plan, Charleston needs to reflect on its historic successes while considering fresh, innovative strategies from the perspective of its residents in the face of increased visitation. A major challenge of our tourism economy is that the lion's share of our visitors are concentrated in a very small part of our city, downtown. People are primarily coming to Charleston to see our historic neighborhoods and private houses, places where locals live and work and go about their daily lives. We don't have major landmarks, cathedrals, other major sort of public facilities like a lot of other cities. And so it is the wonderfully preserved collection of buildings ranging from the early 18th to the 20th centuries that are the draw. And again, most of those buildings are occupied by, residents. Okay, so to help engage you all in this evening's conversation, we are using an interactive online tool. It's really fancy technology. To participate, please make sure that you are on the Wi-Fi that we have provided. The network is called HCF Events, and the password is historic. And it's my understanding that it's case sensitive, and that should all be in your brochure that you have, the program, but it's case sensitive with HCF, the E in events being capitalized, and then the H in historic being capitalized as well, and that's the password. And once you are on the Wi-Fi, all you need to do is scan the QR code on the program in the front of you, in the program in front of you, or on this screen if you can do it that way too, if you don't happen to have a program, or you can borrow your neighbor's program. And we will, I can assure you, take care of the rest. We've run through this a good bit. Of course, it makes me super nervous, but if your phone is not able to pick up the QR code, raise your hand and we will come to assist you. We have HCF staff sort of spread throughout the room and they can help you. And so we're going to ask a series of questions, not many, just 4, and we will give you about 30 seconds to respond because the answers are going to be populated on the screen behind me in real time. So I will ask 3 questions now and then 1 question at the end. I know you're no stress. Your phone screen may initially say there are no active polls at the moment. It's because we haven't started yet, but we will start it in a minute. So rest assured. But in just a few seconds, you will see the first question pop up on your phone as we activate the survey in real time. And in case any of you were wondering, your answers to the questions are anonymous. So, to kick things off and make sure the technology is working smoothly, I'm going to give you an easy first question. What do you enjoy most about living in Charleston? And this is a multiple choice question, so please only select one of the answers. Obviously, there's lots of different things, but what do you enjoy most about living in Charleston? And again, I'm going to give you a roughly half a minute to make your answers. It's kind of fun to watch the bar graph move back and forth. Oh. I probably should have a timer. I don't know after 30 seconds is up. Is it not really moving too much? Doesn't seem like it. Well, interesting. Well, okay. I have to say I find it kind of fascinating. What's that? Oh, there's a tie. Okay. Well, we like both of those. Those are good ones. But I find it interesting. You know, we hear there's some ones that aren't showing up. Food and dining. We hear a lot about how food and dining has really become one of the main draws for visitors, but it's interesting that it doesn't pop up for residents. So what we have, well, y'all saw it. I don't know. I can look down here. Okay, well, cool. Y'all did an amazing job. Way to go. Okay. The next question is, what is the greatest benefit of tourism to you? Now, this is a little trickier because you have to type in an answer. This is not multiple choice. And what we really want is for you to type in just one word. So you've got to sum it up in one word. What is the greatest benefit that you see of the robust tourism economy here in Charleston? Because certainly there are many. But please just try to type in one word because your responses are going to create a word cloud, as they call it. And again, I'll give about 30 seconds to respond to that, please. Employment and money. That's a little counterintuitive, but that's good. I mean, we need jobs, and everybody needs money. Interesting. Okay, and flights did not get. I thought direct flights might have gotten a little more attention because that has been pretty incredible what has happened over the last 10 years in terms of direct flights, which are very useful. Okay. All right. Are they still moving? Have we settled? Nothing is pretty big. Okay. Okay. So there's one more question. Thank you for that. Very interesting. And we will be capturing all these responses, so don't worry. So this is the third question, and then we're going to pause the questioning for a bit. So the third question is, what is the biggest challenge resulting from tourism? And again, just please try to write one word that captures the challenge that you perceive as the greatest resulting from tourism in your town. You're not secretly doing it? Cultural rot. All right, Kate, you have to do. That's two words. That's cheating. Okay. You know, one thing I'll quickly say about these issues, you know, we've been looking at a lot of the other tourism management plans the city's been doing since 1978, and it is super interesting. The issues are pretty consistent, and in 1978, I was just talking to Mr. Rivers about that was a different time, and I was a kid then, and I remember it well, and it was a lot quieter, but people complained a lot about congestion and traffic. But it's a legitimate concern now. Affordability, certainly overcrowding. Awesome. Okay, you guys, wow, you were really good. I appreciate that. Okay, nice work again. I'm now going to introduce all the speakers. We have an incredible roster of speakers this evening. We're very honored to have them with us tonight. And he probably doesn't need a ton of introduction, but I think it is helpful, puts things into context. First, Mayor William Cogswell, who is a dedicated lifelong resident of Charleston. He assumed office last year with an unwavering commitment to prioritizing the needs of the city's residents, which is very relevant to this evening. Grounded in the principles of smart growth, safe communities, and sound governance. His leadership ethos is geared towards shaping a vibrant and sustainable future for Charleston. With a rich background in real estate spanning over 2 decades, Mayor Cogswell has played a pivotal role in revitalizing historic properties, transforming them into thriving urban centers, such as the Cigar Factory, Garco Mill, and the Navy Yard, both of which are in North Charleston. Drawing upon his extensive experience, his goal is to leverage these professional lessons to guide Charleston into a future marked by responsible growth, another relevant word, responsible growth. Since the beginning of his career, he has dedicated himself to preserving the best of what Charleston has to offer. Yay. Okay, next we will be hearing from Dr. Daniel Gutentag. He's an associate professor of hospitality and tourism management in the School of Business at the College of Charleston. He also serves as the director of the college's Office of Tourism Analysis, which undertakes research on behalf of the local hospitality and tourism industry. He holds a PhD in Recreation and Leisure Studies and a master's degree in Tourism Policy and Planning, both from the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada. He previously worked as a tourism business analyst with the Toronto Convention and Visitors Association, and recently served as a Fulbright Scholar in Panama, where he researched and assisted indigenous tourism enterprises. He regularly publishes research in top academic hospitality and tourism journals and has been featured in major media outlets across the country. Then, we're very excited to have our guests from outside of Charleston. We will be hearing from the 3 representatives from Bloomberg. First, George Fertitta is the CEO of Bloomberg Associates, which is the philanthropic consulting arm of Bloomberg Philanthropies, which works at no cost with city leaders around the world to help solve complex urban challenges. Kind of sounds like a fit, doesn't it? Their overarching mission is, quote, unlocking the potential of city governments to improve residents' lives, end quote. Again, very, very relevant. Prior to joining Bloomberg, Fertitta served from 2006 to 2013 as CEO of NYC & Company, a private nonprofit marketing agency that operates as New York City's advertising, tourism, convention sales, partnerships, and licensing organization. And before entering public service, Fertitta was founder and chairman of a major marketing and advertising agency with a range of clients in the U.S. and abroad. Next, with Bloomberg, we have Gordon Innes, who joined Bloomberg Associates in January of 2017. Prior to joining Bloomberg, Gordon was the inaugural CEO of London & Partners, the UK capital's official promotional and economic development company. He contributed to London becoming the world's most popular visitor destination. Further, the city retained its position as the #1 destination for foreign direct investment and international students. Gordon has also held senior positions in UK national government, developing the government's low-carbon industrial strategy, leading the creation of the UK Green Investment Bank, and spearheading the government's trade and foreign direct investment efforts in the U.S. That's a lot. Before entering public service, Gordon worked as a solicitor in both England and Australia. And last but not least, we have Kate Levin, who is a principal at Bloomberg Associates, focusing on arts and culture. Previously, she served as commissioner of the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs from 2002 to 2013, managing the largest single arts funder in the U.S. outside of the federal government. She increased the number of nonprofit cultural organizations receiving support and grant awards by more than 30%. Levin oversaw the city's permanent public art commissioning program and helped develop and promote numerous contemporary exhibitions and performances. She worked to create several new cultural districts and organizations, extending New York's vitality and impact as a world cultural capital. A former professor of English at City College of New York, Levin also served in the administration of Mayor Ed Koch. So with all that, you all are ready to hear from other people, so I welcome Mayor Cogswell to the stage.
Well, good evening. It's kind of a tough act to follow with all the technology there. Don't worry, I'm not going to try and attempt that. But I do want to thank you all for being here tonight and thank Winslow and Historic Charleston Foundation for helping to facilitate this critical update to our tourism management plan. Of course, Historic Charleston Foundation was essential in putting together the first version almost 50 years ago, so it is fitting that you all are at the forefront as the city looks to adapt and evolve under the strains of our own success. I also want to say thank you to Dr. Gutentag and the College of Charleston's Office of Tourism Analysis, as well as the CVB, for their commitment and support. These organizations are going to be vital and critical partners in this effort's success, and I'm confident that with their data, their analytics, and their marketing expertise, we can find a healthy balance between the visitor's experience and those of us that live here. Finally, I want to thank George and the experts at Bloomberg Associates for taking this on. Your passion and support for cities is only compounded by your understanding that local governments can often serve as incubators for good policy. Suffice it to say, your reputation precedes you, and the work we have done together on housing and flooding continues to prove invaluable. So, since this is a city initiative, during my time tonight, I think it only fitting as mayor to give you my 3 priorities or guiding principles on tourism and the related lens through which I think we should look at other cities on how they are successfully tackling this critical issue. First, some facts. It should come as no surprise that we do get enormous benefits from visitors. Accommodations tax, hospitality tax, sales tax, parking revenue, business licenses. Visitors fund a huge portion of our annual budget. This keeps your property taxes low, and yes, you actually have some of the lowest net millage in the state because all of the local option sales tax goes back to property tax relief. It supports an incredible array of local restaurants and businesses, and, even though it showed up small, an increasing number of direct flights. But I also respect that it brings influencers in your driveway, bachelorette parties singing at 3 a.m. on the Battery, in buses not meant for 18th century streets. So my first priority, put residents first. I know this sounds like something obvious an elected official should say, especially to this audience, but there is more behind it than a political soundbite. Many of you all may not know this about me, but I was a tour guide every summer in college. I loved it. The money was great, and contrary to some opinions, the men and women I worked with had a sincere love for our city and really were students of our history. But more to the point on this conversation, when I was giving one of my hundreds of tours on those 4 summers, 9 out of 10 people on my carriage or on the walking tours seemed to have a genuine appreciation for this place. Simply put, they were in awe that people actually lived here. And somebody who was born and raised downtown, I was like an alien, living proof though. Once my credentials were established, the one constant question I would get, especially from those who gave the best tips, was where do you eat? Where do you drink? What parks do you visit? What do you enjoy about this city when you're not giving tours? So while it may seem anecdotal, to me, it makes good business sense to put locals first. You see, by focusing on how we can make Charleston better for our residents, be it the low line, expanding the performing and visual arts programs, the new battery extension, a major park on the waterfront at Union Pier, by burying more power lines to increase the tree canopy, we can and will create a true win-win. Tourists want to go where locals go, enjoy what locals enjoy. So let's focus on those experiences, policies, and initiatives that put locals first, and I promise you, visitor experience will be enhanced as well. So my next priority, expand the footprint. We have incredible places in the Lowcountry, and while time in the historic district will be on most visitors' agenda, to me it makes sense to expand the footprint of our visitors' experience so we can share the wealth and relieve some of the pressure downtown. Think of Audubon Park versus the French Quarter in New Orleans, or Bolden Creek versus the downtown riverfront in Austin, Texas. These are areas with incredible character that, like the first defined priority, are places where locals like to go. Johns Island is getting ready to have an incredible new park around Angel Oak and has some of the best restaurants in the region. West Ashley has a revamped Charlestown Landing and will soon have a massive new redevelopment that will bring in an urban park, new dining experiences, and local shops across the street at Sumar. Encouraging tourists to visit and explore these new and enhanced experiences may take some time, but when we think about marketing strategy to attract visitors, let's let them know of all that we have to offer and encourage them to get off the beaten path. Now, I can see some of you all are probably panicking that whatever undiscovered safe haven you have to drink coffee or to walk your dog is going to get inundated with flip-flops and floppy hats. But this does bring me to my third priority. When it comes to the visitors that we target, yes, we want to focus on a healthy spending per visitor ratio that you'll hear about here in a minute. But more importantly, I believe we want to push our visitors to act like they live here. To highlight what I'm talking about, I'll tell you a funny story. 30 years ago, this is the truth, I was an intern for Historic Charleston Foundation, and I heard a story about the legendary Frances Edmonds. Now, I cannot verify if it's true or not, but knowing what I know about Miss Edmonds, it does seem to check out. And I think I saw her daughter here, so she'll correct me if I'm wrong. The story goes she was working with a staff member at HCF regarding her house being on tour. And apparently she had a few rules that she wanted adhered to. When asked by the docent about being somewhat particular, she didn't skip a beat. Well, of course I'm going to be particular, she said. They are going to be sitting in my living room, after all. To me, this is not snobbery or xenophobia. Simply put, it's requiring a mutual respect. In the same vein as I don't want yahoos driving around in floodwaters, I believe very strongly that we should focus on visitors that are going to love and respect our city as we do. It's a celebration of decency, of politeness, of manners, because Charleston is not a rented mule. We are not a transactional town. Spending $25 on fried shrimp does not give a license to bad behavior. This does not mean that we need to have Emily Post's classic next to every Bible in every hotel room, but it does mean that in our marketing, in our branding, on our tours, we are unapologetic about expecting some level of our legendary hospitality to be reciprocated by our guests. So to conclude, my priorities in this effort are to put locals first, expand the experience, and act like you live here. These three filters can and should collectively benefit the residents and visitors alike. And I'm excited to work with HCF, CFC, CVB, Bloomberg Associates, industry leaders, but most importantly, you, the residents, to modernize our tourism ordinance and related marketing strategies in ways that encourage our guests to love our city as we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Daniel Gutentag. I'm a professor of hospitality and tourism management at the College of Charleston and director of the college's Office of Tourism Analysis. So today I'm going to be walking you through a variety of different trends and data that describe tourism here in Charleston. So to begin, in the Office of Tourism Analysis, we conduct a variety of different data analysis and research type work, working with diverse partners throughout the community, tourism businesses and organizations. And to do that work, we rely on a variety of different information sources. So this includes tourism lodging data, government data, mobile geo-tracking data, and an ongoing visitor survey that we conduct. So one of the most important tasks that we do every year is estimating the total economic impact of tourism on Charleston. So as you can see here, in 2024, we estimated that to be just over $14 billion, which is up from $13.1 billion the year before in 2023. Now, a few things to note about this number. Firstly, in this presentation, in these slides, unless otherwise specified, I'm going to be referring to Charleston destination as a whole, which essentially means Charleston County. Also, you're going to see a lot of slides with data that's going back to 2019. That's meant to allow you to see the trends over time and establish that pre-pandemic baseline. Now, as for economic impact, what does that mean? Well, economic impact is partly the expenditures that the tourists make. But then in addition to that, it takes into account all the secondary ripple effects of that expenditure. So for instance, we can imagine tourists come to town, they go and they spend the night in a hotel and they pay the hotel to spend the night there. But then in order to operate their business, the hotel has all sorts of expenditures. They're paying employees, they're buying uniforms, they're hiring an electrician when need be, they're hiring window cleaners, and so on and so forth. And so those window cleaners, for example, they're never actually interfacing with the tourists and being paid directly by the tourists, but they have a more prosperous business, and we have more window cleaners in the community than we would otherwise if it weren't for tourism. So this economic impact figure takes all of that into account. And then lastly, how do we calculate this? So it begins with an estimate of our visitor volume, which is rooted in our lodging data. Then that is combined with expenditure estimates, which is rooted in our visitor survey. And then lastly, we plug all of that into a third-party economic impact model that essentially accounts for all the different interrelationships between the different industries here in the region. So moving on, this $14 billion was generated by an estimated 7.9 million overnight visitors in 2024. And that was up just slightly, about 1% from 7.8 million visitors in 2023. Now, what you may have noted looking at those two slides is that over the years, what we've seen is a much more rapid increase in economic impact growth than we've seen in visitor volume growth. So if we look at these numbers back to 2019, you'll see that visitor volume has increased by roughly 6%, whereas economic impact has increased by about 45%. So now what we're going to do is look through a variety of other data and numbers that sort of shed light on these two trends. So to start with, when we're talking about visitors, it can be helpful to look at hotel room inventory. So on this slide, as you can see, we're going to look at the growth in hotel room inventory dating all the way back to 1990, right after Hurricane Hugo. So in that first decade, in the 90s, we saw average annual growth of new hotel rooms entering the Charleston market of about 4%. If we then look at the next couple decades, we could see we're sort of in the 2 to 3% range. And then in the first half of the 2020s, our current decade, that has slowed down to under 1% growth on average. So in other words, right now we are actually in the midst of a historically slow period of hotel room growth here in Charleston. If we now look at that same data related to the peninsula, what we see is a relatively similar trend, usually with somewhat slower growth. So a little bit slower in the 90s, much slower in the early 2000s, a little bit faster in the 2010s, and then even slower growth, under 0.5% growth on average per year in this first half of the current decade. Now, you may think to yourself, well, that's probably just due to construction slowing down with the pandemic. And while there was some pause in construction related to the pandemic, as we'll see when we look at other cities, it's really not explaining what's going on here. So here we could see the total growth from 2020 to the present in Charleston and on the peninsula compared to a variety of different peer cities. And what you'll note is that the slowest growth city on this list outside of Charleston, which is Charlotte, still had a pace of growth that was double what we've had here. And then many of these other cities have seen growth that was 4, 5, 6, 7, almost 8 times as fast as what we've had here in Charleston over the past 5 years. Now, at the same time, however, what we have not seen is a slowdown in population growth aside from a little blip with the pandemic. We are fortunate enough to live in a place, as we've sort of been talking about, that isn't just a wonderful place that people want to visit, but it's also a place that many people want to move to. And we hear the numbers that get talked about of so-and-so number of people move here every day. And so I think that oftentimes this general population growth and growth overall can get conflated with tourism growth, which I think is reflected in this next analysis that I'm going to show you. So what this analysis shows is a look at the population on the peninsula in April of 2024, on average. So we looked at every single day using mobile geo-tracking data. And it's worth noting that here in Charleston, actually, April is the absolute busiest month of the year for visitors. And what we found is that, on average, about a quarter of the individuals on the peninsula were people who live there full-time on the peninsula. And only a similar amount, right about a quarter as well, were our out-of-town visitors, tourists coming to visit Charleston. But then over 50% were other residents of Charleston who live off of the peninsula, and then going to the peninsula to work, to dine, to shop, to go to church, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is people like me. I live in Mount Pleasant, but I cross the bridge and come to the peninsula very regularly for my job, to give talks like this, to speak with my students, to give my classes, a lot of the work, of course, that I do at the College of Charleston. So now we're going to look at that other trend, the economic impact growth. So to start with, if we look at average visitor expenditure, we can see that last year it was just over $1,100, and that's up from about $880 in 2019. Now, part of that growth is just a function of inflation, and as you all know, everything getting more expensive during that time. But it is more than that, and it speaks to Charleston's ability to attract more and more high-value, high-impact, great bang-for-the-buck visitors. So one segment of travelers that falls within this category of high-impact visitors is our air travelers. So air travelers, compared to visitors who come here by car, the air travelers tend to be more affluent on average. They tend to spend more time in the destination. They tend to do more things in the destination. And you put it all together, not surprisingly, they tend to spend more money in the destination. And so fortunately, we are home to one of the fastest growing airports in the country that attracts more and more of these visitors flying through. So as you can see, we had about 6.3 million passengers come through our airport in 2024. That's up over 1.4 million from where we were at in 2019. And both as a cause and as an effect of this success in passenger growth, we've seen, as we've heard from both of our prior speakers, we have more nonstop flights. So this is the current route map. And you can see routes to cities all across the country and some international routes. And there are actually almost 70 nonstop routes today, up from 40 back in 2019. So now this high impact visitor is also reflected in our hotel performance. So what this slide shows is a very important hotel metric called RevPAR, which stands for revenue per available room. And what that essentially means is how much revenue is each hotel room earning on average per year, regardless of whether it's occupied or not. So it's essentially how efficient is every hotel room at earning money? How much does it generate per night? And so it takes into account both demand and it takes into account price. And so what we can see here is that our hotel rooms are able to generate revenue at a level that far outpaces the average for South Carolina or the country, and also is well ahead of those same peer cities that we looked at a little bit earlier, cities like Asheville and Savannah, with Nashville really being the only one on this list that's playing in the same ballpark that we are. And if we now want to add the peninsula to this chart, you could see that its ability to generate revenue from each room is so significant that I actually had to completely change the y-axis just to fit it on. So all this economic activity, of course, benefits our community in a variety of different ways. As we heard about a second ago, lots and lots of jobs. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates that there are about 55,000 jobs in leisure and hospitality in the Tri-County region. In addition, all the tourism taxes that our visitors pay. So when a tourist comes and stays on the peninsula, they're going to be paying a total of 14% in taxes on top of their room fees. And so as you'll note, those taxes go to a variety of different buckets, but even say the state accommodations tax, much of that money ends up making its way still back to our community here. Then the tourist goes out and dines in a restaurant, and they're going to be paying 11% tax on their food, 16% on their alcohol, including a 2% local hospitality tax. Then the tourist goes to an attraction, and they're going to be paying a 5% state admissions tax. And then that tourist might take a walking tour or a carriage tour and pay a 50-cent per head city tour tax. And all these taxes add up to substantial amounts. So as you'll note, last year there was $45 million collected in hospitality taxes and just under $90 million collected in aggregate from the three different accommodations taxes, the municipal, the county, and the state level. And now going back to this idea of Charleston attracting a high-impact visitor, we are able to generate those taxes more efficiently than most other destinations. So here what we're doing is comparing Charleston with Myrtle Beach, and what you'll note is that both destinations generated essentially identical amounts of state accommodations taxes last year, but Charleston was able to do so with fewer than 2/3 as many hotel rooms. Now, those taxes then benefit our community in a variety of different ways. As the mayor mentioned, it helps to keep property taxes here low. So if anybody is looking for some fun reading tonight, I would encourage you to pull out the 2025 city budget document. And if you find the right page, you will see what I've screenshotted here, which I'll read. Municipal accommodations tax and hospitality fee have played to our strength as a world-class tourist destination and resulted in tremendous benefit to our property owners. In 1990, property taxes were 64.5% of the city's total general fund revenues, but in 2025, they're estimated to be 44%. And lastly, these taxes contribute towards our community in other ways as well, such as helping to fund infrastructure projects like the low battery seawall, contributing towards first responders, and helping out arts and cultural organizations and festivals that both tourists and locals alike get to enjoy. So thank you all so much for your attention in watching all of these numbers. It was a pleasure to have the opportunity to share them with you. And I look forward to working with the Bloomberg team and sharing these numbers and many more with them with the important initiative that they are working on. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you all so much for your attention. I'm going to pass the microphone to our Bloomberg team. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for taking the time to join us here tonight. This is a real opportunity and an honor for us to be here, and I thought I'd just give you a little bit of background on our organization and then sort of set the stage for what we're hoping to do to contribute to the future of your wonderful city. Bloomberg Associates was founded in 2014 as a pro bono consultancy arm of Bloomberg Philanthropies. Our senior staff was originally made up of former commissioners and deputy mayors of the Bloomberg administration for the terms of mayors, New York City. Our range of pro bono consulting includes transportation, social services, municipal integrity and efficiency, urban planning, sustainability, including affordable housing, digital strategies, economic development and tourism, and cultural asset management. Over the past 11 years, we've worked in depth with 22 cities. We've spent up to 10,000, in some cases more than 10,000 hours per year per city. And in a few select cities like Charleston, we've done limited sort of specific one-off projects. Naaman Freeman, who leads our affordability program, affordable housing program, is currently advising the city on this very, very pressing issue. And we, of course, are going to kick off the tourism project today. Bloomberg Philanthropies has had an ongoing and deep relationship with Charleston for many years, but it has really blossomed with Mayor Cogswell. And on the Bloomberg Harvard Leadership Program, City Lab, Bloomberg Center for Public Innovation, and many more programs that he's contributed to and participated in. So Bloomberg Philanthropies has embraced Charleston, and we are proud of the work we do together. Future Livability and Responsible Tourism Plan. This is a really interesting and somewhat unique project for us. We've worked with a number of cities to enhance and advise on their tourism programs. From Paris, believe it or not, you would think they would need a lot of help. We worked with them for many years. They were losing market share, and we completely revamped their entire structure. Mexico City, they were spending all of their money in Mexico to get people to come to Mexico City. We got them to stop that and asked them to really spend money, which they did, over $10 million, to feeder markets, and it was a huge success for them. Milan and Athens, two very famous cities, they did not even have their own destination marketing organization. They just relied on the federal governments, their respective federal governments, and we created local government work for them. And then I would say one of the interesting things for us is cities like Chicago and Detroit. All they cared about was, not all they cared about, but what they really focused on was convention and meeting sales, and really forgot the importance of their local residents and having culture and inviting people from their neighboring areas to come and visit a wonderful city. These issues range from unprofessional tourism organizations to underfunding, lack of focus, no real strategy, and in some cases, just plain complacency. Charleston has none of these issues, as you've just heard. You all know well, from a domestic tourism perspective, you are the top of the pile. Your tourism organization is as good as it gets. Helen Hill is an icon throughout the industry. The city has all the assets to be a tourism magnet, including an unparalleled brand personality. Almost all cities would love to be in your place. And most successful cities would not even think to future plan the way Charleston has done for decades. Our team at Bloomberg Associates has been asked to provide outside perspective, new eyes and ears to try to help Charleston navigate, maintain the balance of your tourism and your growth success into the future. In a way, it's a more difficult assignment because it's much more nuanced and perhaps more emotional than just fixing a problem or changing a direction. So we're here to be your partners, to help you build on your long-term livability vision for your great city. Starting today and over the next number of months, we'll be meeting with a wide range of Charleston stakeholders. The mayor and Josh and Winslow and Helen and others have recommended a number of stakeholders for us to meet with and learn from. We'll get to meet some of you in person over these next several days, and we'll look forward to connecting with many more of you subsequently in the future. In addition, as you'll see in a moment, over the past several months, we've been fielding some best practice research based on what we perceive to be some of the issues and opportunities related to Charleston tourism, although I don't think there's really any great analogy, quite honestly. Gordon will share with you some highlights and some initial findings, but the real work is ahead of us, to be good, perceptive observers and listeners, and to understand all of your concerns and the hopes that everybody has for the future of this vibrant city. For us to take our collective experience, your wants, your needs, and with luck, help the city of Charleston chart the right course for its long-term future. We will be working over the summer on with a number of goals and to share our findings with you, recommended likely in this fall. Just to change the subject a minute and bring up our next speaker, clearly the cornerstone of Charleston's great success is an extraordinary culture and historical assets. Kate Levin, who heads up Bloomberg Associates Cultural Assets Management Practice, as well as leading Bloomberg Philanthropies, arts program, it's also advising on your future livability and responsible plan. Kate and I work very closely in New York City and created a vibrancy program, and some of the things that the mayor mentioned was really interesting. We created together a program called Just Ask the Locals, and it was exactly that. We had famous people talking about their local neighborhoods. We talk about dispersion. It was, Mike Bloomberg's goal, and Kate was one of the, strongest proponents of this, is that just like you have the issue here, most people thought of New York City as Manhattan. And I won't say exactly what Mike Bloomberg said, but he said, sort of, screw Manhattan, we're going to take care of all the other boroughs. And so we literally created programs to get people to not spend time in Manhattan and to go to Queens, to go to Brooklyn. Staten Island was a little tough, Bronx was a little bit easier. And lots of hotel development, lots of restaurants, more cultural institutions. And so that's a program, and again, I didn't know what the mayor was going to be saying tonight, but that's a program we've had a lot of experience in, and it's really effective in making sure that not only does the city get great benefit, but all parts of the city get great benefit. So at that, I'm going to ask Kate to come up and say a few words. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It's always dangerous when a fan becomes a bureaucrat, and I'm a huge fan of Charleston. You have a genuinely unique mix of arts and culture, from visual and performing arts to world-class craft to horticulture, historic sites, architecture, culinary, parks, creative retail, media production, preservation, festival culture. Winslow talked about, used the analogy of a hen house. Arts and culture really is the goose laying the golden egg, and this just gets us into a poultry situation that I'm going to put down and walk away. But I do very much look forward to listening and learning from all of you. The one piece of perspective I will double down on, and it's something that the mayor said, I have never known a world-class cultural destination that didn't, in fact, optimize the way cultural organizations attract residents. If you are not appealing to and serving your neighbors, you're really not making the kind of use of what arts and culture can do so profoundly in moving beyond what often, much as I love the tourism industry, becomes a heads and beds kind of focus. And there's no more valuable head or bed than the one that is right across the street or right across town. So again, look forward to working with all of you. Going to have the privilege of meeting with some folks this trip, and look forward to many more opportunities to engage. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And I believe there is a clicker somewhere. There you go. It happens automatically. Thank you. So as George said, as Kate said, we are here this week, and this will be the start of several trips to Charleston to listen to you, to really learn from you. But we've already started to do a bit of exploration, looking at some other successful cities from around the world, cities that are facing some of the same challenges that you may be facing, some of the challenges that the mayor mentioned earlier. From things like nuisance behavior, overcrowding, congestion, inappropriate development in some cases, development that could harm the historic character of a city or community cohesion. And we're looking at some of the, not only the challenges that those cities have faced, but some of the solutions that they've put in place which have been effective, which may have some learnings for Charleston. Obviously, you have different local situations, but there may be some learnings which are appropriate. I'll talk through very briefly these examples, really just to get you thinking, maybe to inspire some ideas, some thoughts. And then I think Winslow is going to give you an opportunity to use the technology to give us your initial thoughts on what you think are important, what you think are priorities for the city going forward. Starting off on nuisance behaviors, we heard about the dreaded bachelorettes. I'm pleased to say for once you can't blame the English on that, perhaps in the Netherlands, but not in Charleston. One example, a great example that was taken forward was by the region of Flanders in Belgium. They were very concerned about the quality of tourists that they were getting, the impact it was having in terms of noise, in terms of public drunkenness. And so they introduced a program called the Flanders Masters Initiative, which was about trying to attract a far more culturally engaged visitor. It combined investments in museums with a rotating focus on particular Flemish artists. It sounds boring, perhaps, to some people, but it had phenomenal reach and success. They really reimagined classical works. They introduced new cultural routes to connect Antwerp to neighboring regions. They also targeted locals, having public school activities, public talks, identifying how residents could get engaged as tour guides in telling the story, the history of the region. Very successful. It attracted around 400,000 international visitors, high-spending international visitors. And really importantly, it also boosted local cultural awareness. A lot of residents learning more about their own history and recognizing the role that tourism could play in preserving that history as well as some of their historic buildings. Similar challenge, the city of Amsterdam, a huge, massively successful destination, but also having real challenges again with nuisance behaviors. In this case, in the run-up to COVID, the city launched a campaign using geo-targeted messaging, both for visitors before their visit and while they were in Amsterdam. alongside bold street signage, visible warnings about fines that you could get depending on your behavior. And they also really stepped up enforcement, particularly Thursdays to Saturdays, and in particular areas of the city. They changed some of the rules. They banned some party tours, beer bikes. They restricted tours to the red light district. And they also introduced far tighter rules on short-term rentals in certain areas of the city. The result of it was residents dropped noise complaints by about 15%. And more than 60% of visitors said that they saw the campaign and that they mitigated their behaviors as a result. And that's an ongoing campaign that they've relaunched since COVID. New Orleans, we heard earlier, also a very successful destination, also significant challenges they've had around Bourbon Street. More recently, the city has developed a digital tool with a local startup company to understand visitor behavior, visitor spend. They realized that 82% of all visitor spend was within a mile radius of Bourbon Street. And so they launched campaigns, again, geo-targeted campaigns to get people out to other parts of the city to relieve some of the pressure, to reduce some of the challenges and the behaviors there. They've managed so far to increase visitor expansion out to other parts of the city by about a quarter. And those local businesses in the destinations that they've marketed have seen about a 20% increase in turnover since the campaign has started. So again, great success, moving people out, avoiding some of the congestion, avoiding some of the behaviors that they were seeing in Bourbon Street. Turning to traffic and congestion, definitely an issue. I have family here in Charleston, in-laws here, so I've been coming for about 20 years up and down to the city, and I've certainly seen the traffic increase during that time. Cities like Salzburg have done a very good job, Salzburg in Austria, in preserving their old town, in enhancing walkability, in reducing traffic, expanding bike paths, expanding public transport. They had a tourism pass. They expanded that to provide free public transport for visitors. They introduced new mobile maps, wayfinding information signage that gave walking distances that provided cultural context. 65% of visitors to Charleston now use the tourism pass, and public transport has increased by more than 30% in the last few years. Some of the pedestrian-free areas have also enabled more events, and that's led to significant increases in local resident satisfactions with what's going on in their neighborhoods. Columbus, Ohio has done some good work. This is a few years ago. They got a grant from the Department of Transportation to introduce smart transit hubs at different locations around the city. So that brings together bike share, ride share, it brings together public transport, as well as electric shuttles that they use to take people around the almost 3-mile route around the city to key destinations. They introduced digital tools to make it more user-friendly, easier for people to use those transit hubs. And the autonomous shuttle that they put in place really became a model for many other cities that have rolled that out subsequently. Cities like Atlanta, around Peachtree, Detroit, Ann Arbor, San Jose. We're working in Ottawa at the moment. They're about to roll out an autonomous vehicle for one of their key loops to get people again to key attractions. And then finally turning to development, or in some cases over or inappropriate development. Asheville did some work during the pandemic on this. There was real concerns about hotel development, about the impact it was having on the downtown, on the look and feel of the neighborhood. So they decided at the time to pause development for a year. I don't know if I can say that with the mayor as a developer in front of me. That led to some new rules. They did a lot of resident engagement during that time. They did it obviously during COVID, which was a good time to do it. They did extensive resident engagements around design guidelines, around when council should get involved and should have a say in development, and also introducing community benefit agreements to see, again, how hotel developers could contribute to their local communities where they were doing the development. The result was fewer hotel being developed, but also, importantly, smaller hotels in multiple locations. The residents, as a result of that, said that they had greater trust in the planning system. And the developers actually said they had found that there was greater predictability in Asheville as a result of the rules that were published, and so they found it quite helpful. Obviously, there are trade-offs there. Naaman, our housing advisor, is here in the second row. If you limit hotel development, that can put a greater pressure on development outside the city in North Charleston, other areas, which can lead to increased traffic, can lead to pressure on downtown parking. It can also drive up demand for short-term rentals, obviously, and so there's a balance here that really needs to be got right, and all these policies need to be looked at in conjunction. Finally, before I hand back to George, a bit of work that Toronto has done. Toronto has real challenges, has had for many years real challenges in terms of its transportation. It's been very good at looking at underutilized infrastructure. I know you've got the Low Line coming here. It's done something similar, a 2-mile park beneath a raised highway that it develops not only into a tourist attraction, a green space, but also, really importantly, connecting a neighborhood to attractions and to the waterfront with cycling and walking. It also supported stormwater management and has been a great success, drawing about 200,000 visitors with ice hockey in winter, with public performances, with street markets. It's become a real important asset for the residents as well as a tourist attraction, really a theme that we've been talking about tonight. So I'll stop there. I think George is going to say a couple more words, and then we will hand back to Winslow. But hopefully, as I said, that's given you just a couple of ideas, some ideas of what some other cities are doing. And we would really love to hear from you, your views on some of the challenges, but also your views on what you see as some of the solutions going forward. Thank you.
No one can really accurately predict what the future of any city looks like 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. It's especially true for any coastal city. Thoughtful future thinking and planning based on data and research, coupled with emotional intelligence, can certainly help guide and anticipate a path forward. And that is where we hope we can be helpful. As everyone here knows, our world has changed at an extraordinary pace. There are many forces against trying to maintain and enhance the quality of life, especially in a city as unique and special as Charleston. So much of what residents hold dear and visitors cherish requires real diligence, commitment, thoughtful restraint, respect, and love. This is an easy city to love. And like any loving relationship, it takes hard work and constant dedication to maintain and grow. Nothing can be taken for granted. I believe the biggest threat that Charleston is facing right now is really the forces of nature, but an almost equal threat is the ability to thread the needle to maintain the right balance for growth and always putting the residents in the forefront. We hope our contributions will be of value to this very important endeavor. Thank you.
All right. I want to thank, excuse me, thank you to all of our speakers this evening. Please join me in another round of applause. Thank you. So I think and hope that you'll agree that this initiative is very exciting and will offer us a suite of strategies to pursue here in Charleston. And I think one of the most exciting things, as I was listening and as we've talked about in planning for this, is this idea of sort of taking an integrated approach to tourism management. You cannot look at tourism in isolation. You have to think about it as you think about land use, as you think about development, as you think about transportation and mobility, as you think about resiliency and dealing with flooding and stormwater. So I think, suffice it to say that we are dealing with the pros in that area because they deal with all those areas. And so I think we're going to have such an incredible opportunity to think about tourism management in a much more comprehensive, holistic, and integrated way. And for that, we really are been talking to the mayor and to folks in City Hall and the planning staff about how this report will get tied in, hopefully, into the Peninsula Plan, which we'll be picking up later this year, because you really can't think about the ecosystem of the peninsula and thinking about policies and planning without thinking about tourism. I mean, how on earth could you? So I just want to strongly suggest that we think about this work being sort of embedded within that Peninsula Plan. Okay, I want to ask you one last time to provide us feedback on what you just heard. So, like you did before, please scan the QR code, and hopefully you still already have it, but if you need to get back to the platform, go ahead and do that. And here, the poll is activated. And so we have the last question, which we would like you to answer right now, and that is, from the case studies presented this evening, which 3 could be most useful to Charleston in your mind? And we are, again, asking you for 3. You can do no more than 3. You don't have to do 3, but up to 3. But you can't do any more than 3, sorry. So again, I'll give you some time. I don't know if we're going to do the Jeopardy music again. I'm no Alex Trebek. Still moving a little bit. All right. Well, it looks pretty stable. Okay. Well, this is super interesting. Probably not a surprise. We do know that folks here love to learn from Amsterdam. Obviously, we aren't Amsterdam, but they've certainly gone through a lot there over the last, hundreds of years. But certainly more recently with their tourism, we have a lot to learn there. And, they've done an interesting thing. The last time we had a larger forum around tourism management, it was in 2019, in the fall of 2019. And, of course, so we had all this momentum, and we had a gentleman from Amsterdam who came, who flew over to talk about his experience. And the DMO, as they call them, the Destination Marketing Organization in Amsterdam, had completely shifted their model away from marketing and towards management, which is an interesting idea, and I know it got people very excited. But, of course, COVID hit right after that, and sort of we didn't focus on tourism for a little bit of time there because we had a pandemic. But Amsterdam is an interesting case study for sure. Preservation of the Old Town, I'm not surprised. I'm glad, to see that. I think it'll be interesting to see what Salzburg's up to. Hotels, obviously that's been an advocacy topic of ours more recently because of a recent proposal. So all good. So again, we'll be capturing all that. Thank you all very much. And so again, to quickly review next steps for this initiative, just to remind you all what is going to be happening. We heard from George a little bit on this, but the Bloomberg team is going to be meeting with key stakeholders over the next 2 days in Charleston, and then they will continue their outreach with the community, with the stakeholders over the summer. They will also be diving deep into their research phase so that we can have a comprehensive series of recommendations informed by strategies that have been successful in other cities around the world. At some point in the fall, we haven't quite determined, and we're going to take their lead on the timing of that, but at some point in the fall, they will return to Charleston to unveil their report so that it can be utilized by the city as a framework for a completely new tourism management plan. I want to be clear, these guys are not rewriting our tourism management plan. They are teeing us up to be extremely successful and data-driven in our approach, meaning the city's approach and the community's approach towards tourism management. But I think it's really going to get us really on track, which is amazing. So I've been told that the city will be setting up a web page for this initiative to keep people informed, and we will certainly, Historic Charleston will notify you once that has been set up. Also, and this is a little scary, but they both agreed to it, there are 2 people listed on the back of your program that you are welcome to contact with questions or suggestions. I thought they were a little bit kooky, but they both agreed to it. And so that is Lisa Jones on our staff, my director of advocacy, and also Josh Martin, who is a whirlwind of a advisor to the mayor and is embedded in City Hall. But please do reach out to them if you do have questions or you see interesting ideas, anything. So, and we'll be compiling that as well. So thanks again to our partners at the City of Charleston, Explore Charleston, and of course, Bloomberg Associates. I think it's a pretty telling deal that these guys love Charleston because they sent the big cheese. George Fertitta is the head of the whole darn thing, and he's helping lead this effort. I kind of feel really special about that. So I think it shows. And then also with his associates and all the deep bench of experts that they have access to, I think it's really ideal. And I want to thank all of you all for coming this evening. Thank you for your support of this effort and for your commitment to Historic Charleston's mission. Have a great evening. Thank you.